Hello, everybody, and welcome to Debunking Office 365 Backup and Security Misconceptions. My name is William Bell, Executive Vice President of Products at phoenixNAP, and with me today is Michael Deemer, Inside Systems Engineer at Veeam. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, everybody. So we have a pretty packed agenda. I'm going to take you guys through a little bit of kind of state of the industry and security issues that we're all facing. And then we're going to get into some Office 365 specific stuff. And Mike's going to talk about Veeam technology and kind of how phoenixNAP and Veeam are working together. And I think, hopefully this will be a really insightful presentation for practitioners, people that are really looking to address some of these problems themselves. So if you're on the call and you're either helping customers address these problems or you're addressing the problems yourself directly, hopefully this will be a really insightful presentation for you. So real quick, a little bit about phoenixNAP. For those of you that are not familiar with us, that got here via some type of marketing email blast from Veeam or ourselves, we have been a Veeam partner for the last 7 years. We are one of the leaders in the cloud backup and disaster recovery space, recognized by Gartner in their market guide for disaster recovery, and truly a top level partnership between Veeam and phoenixNAP worldwide. And we're offering a slew of Veeam powered disaster recovery and backup as a service solutions across many of the regions that you see here today. And I think this map kind of helps show the breadth of the work that we're doing and how comprehensive some of our coverage is in helping customers prepare for the inevitable, right? What ultimately is likely to occur, whether maliciously or through some type of, act of God or misconfiguration. There's going to be some type of issue for you to address in the future. So with that, I'm going to actually get a couple of quick polls out so that we can get an idea of the audience. So if you guys could help me out, that would be great. Let me know kind of where you guys stand on industry vertical, right? Just so if we've got a bunch of healthcare people on the call or education, I can help kind of drive some of this specifically to the work that you guys are doing. So I'm going to give this just a little bit of time here. Oh man, we got everybody on the ball this morning. Big turnout on the voting. Everybody's used to voting. Last week they did the voting and now they're here ready to press the button. So, all right, 78%. I'm gonna close this one down, share the responses with everybody. Looks like we got about 50% of the folks on the call today. A large percentage are in the information technology space, a lot in general business. We got a little bit of smattering in healthcare and government, no education, which is shocking, Michael, given how strong Veeam is in the higher ed space and the local education space. I'm shocked by that. And then we're gonna switch this over and do size, just so I know, are we dealing with majority small business? I suspect it will be kind of small to medium leaning, but we'll go ahead and get those votes. Wow, quite a bit more, over 1,000 than I expected. Usually it's a sub 10% number, but we're over 10% on size of organization. Still leaning SMB, that's just fine. A lot of the solutions we're going to talk about today and the ideas and issues that people are facing are not are not size specific issues. Office 365 is very extensible, and the backup solutions that we're delivering together with Veeam can accommodate very large environments. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this down. We had 47% up to 100, 33% up to 500, 8% up to 1,000, and 11% more than 1,000 employees. So that is actually going to help us a little bit drive some of this content. So we're gonna start a little bit with general security stuff. I know that everyone here is thinking about issues like ransomware, malware. A lot of this the stuff I'm going to talk about is not going to be specific to any particular type of malicious content. We're seeing this massive rise of ransomware still. I thought last year was going to be kind of a peak on the ransomware side. COVID and the opportunities that have been brought, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here in a minute, by work from home and people, just being tired and clicking on things that they shouldn't, have brought some amazing challenges to security and IT teams around the globe. But for those of you that are not familiar, this is pretty much the boilerplate, attack vector for nefarious actors on the internet, right? They send emails, they infect systems, they use the systems to spread to other systems. They're on the network, they're scanning, they're encrypting anything that they can get a hold of, and they're asking you to pay, right? And we've seen some really high-end examples of this. It's costing people real dollars. And I mean, I think these statistics, are just absolutely mind-blowing how much money it's costing business in general, whether you're paying ransom, which we don't recommend, or you're fighting to recover your data. A little bit of protection can go a long way to preventing an outcome that is, potentially disastrous, right? And I think that that's going to be a key theme to everything we're going to talk about today, especially as we get to Office 365 and why people are adopting Office 365. I know that people are trying to deal with less things, trying to simplify their lives from an IT perspective, but this is definitely adding complexity. And ultimately, this is, resulting in, larger exposure of data, data exfiltration, and ultimately costing people real dollars, right? So remote work, COVID have just, lit this up. And, we're seeing it in our customer base. We have partners like Veeam, like the guys at Alert Logic that have, SOC services. They're seeing this just massive spike in connected workforce threats, right? From the on-prem or from the home office to the data center. So we talked a little bit about coronavirus-related phishing. It's just been rampant. We're seeing this ransomware as a service thing continue to really pay dividends, where you don't even need to be an expert. You can go hire people to basically just run ransomware campaigns for you and make money off of that. So if you're just a bad person without a technological, many technological skills, you now have the ability to do this. We're seeing this dawn to some extent of SaaS ransomware, where customers are finding ways to lock out accounts, encrypt, large bulk things, not just email, but like you can imagine OneDrive data and things like that. If you can get a privileged account access to an organization's OneDrive, you can literally just go through and one by one start encrypting all the data on the OneDrive storage. It's that simple, right? And it will start to become more prevalent as the data that's valuable shifts from the on-prem, from the Windows server that would be hit with CryptoLocker in the past to a SaaS application. You're going to see people targeting those applications, and that is why there's this relationship between malware, ransomware, and SaaS, right? That's kind of this transition that we're going to talk about, and really maybe play some into your thinking, or should start playing into your thinking around protecting SaaS. It is a common misconception to the theme of this webinar that SaaS is just everything's going to be fine, right? People adopt Office 365 and G Suite and Box and Dropbox, and they just think, you know what? I'm gonna put my data here and everything's gonna be fine. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to back it up. I don't need to secure it in any way. I just need to put the data there and they'll take care of it. And unfortunately, it couldn't be further from the truth. So let's get right into the meat of what this looks like, right? So there's 6 common Office 365 specific. I think you could apply these to G Suite and other SaaS services, but given, we're here talking about Office 365 and the all-encompassing version of that, right? Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Office 365, email. There are some common themes that everyone should kind of be aware of. This is usually the place that we get started. I have calls with customers all the time, and they tell me things like, well, we have the recycle bin in Office 365, and so we don't need any backups. And I, scratch my head a little bit, and I look at things and I ask questions like, you have snapshots on your old school array. Did you just use those and not actually acquire a backup technology to take backups in a conscious and well planned out way? And the answer is almost always no, we bought Veeam, or we bought Commvault, or we bought whatever. We didn't just rely on my array to have some snapshots from a few weeks ago when I deleted that file. And I think that that's a huge misconception that people are faced with. All right. Next one. Office 365 is protected from human error by default. To some extent, right? Like we talked about, recycle bin does exist. If you just delete something, you can go get it from a thing. But you have 30 days. That's not changeable. It's a 30-day recycle bin. You have 30 days to figure out that you deleted something, and then you can't get it back. If you're not doing any other backups, if you're not doing any other data protection, you cannot get it back at that point. Office 365 filters out phishing emails. Let me tell you this. We adopted Office 365 about a year and a half ago internally. I think our Barracuda, spam firewalls were better personally than the Office 365 built-in capabilities. I know our teams are tweaking them. I don't know, I think this is definitely a your mileage may vary area. But for certain, phishing is one of the things that, depending on the type of phishing, that's hardest to catch because they're written so well. And a lot of times they're asking you to do things that might not carry a payload, right? There's a lot of phishing attacks out there that are not payload based, like open this file. Sometimes it's go to this website or do this thing for me, right? So definitely not filtering out all phishing. Yeah, that's not a thing. There is no point in time recovery by default in Office 365. There are data protection technologies that you can acquire and or services like ours, but there's nothing there kind of by default for you. Microsoft retains my Office 365 data indefinitely. Also not the case. I will say this, Office 365 is highly durable. The likelihood that all your data is just going to be gone due to an error on Microsoft's end is probably extremely unlikely. There is multi-region replication going on for Office 365. It would take a fairly catastrophic effort for something like that to occur. Can there be intermittent access issues? For sure. Can there be delayed replication issues? Absolutely. But the data is fairly durable. The problem with durability is it doesn't in most cases actually help you with acts of malicious nature or human error. So just because the data is replicated in 2 or 3+ locations doesn't mean if your CEO deletes some email 31 days ago that data is just available magically for you, because it's certainly not. And we have many examples, customers, prospects that we've talked to where they've run into issues, and no amount of begging Microsoft helps you address that. And there are some things here around Microsoft has access to my data. They do in some ways. They also are providing a lot of different capabilities for organizations to look at. It's not particularly germane to this webinar, but I highly suggest that you look at your own integrations to help with data privacy in Office 365. They have some capabilities as well and some tools. I believe they're only available on like E5 plans and above. As you get into the more intense security and governance areas of Office 365, those things also come at a pretty hefty cost. So I think the point that they mentioned, my team was mentioning here, is there's not some secret archive of backups that they made for you. Mike, I don't think, right? They're not making like, indefinite archives of Office 365 data and just keeping it around for everyone, right?
No, they're not.
And that's what I figured. All right. So this is where the rubber meets the road. For everyone that's on this call that's thinking to themselves, oh, well, I don't believe you. Well, it specifically says right here, they're not responsible for anything. It is your data. There's actually another part of this that I can share with anyone that's interested that talks about how, Microsoft, it does not own your data. You own your data, and you are responsible for protecting it. And by protecting it, they mean preventing, unauthenticated or malicious actors from accessing it. They mean, backing it up in the case of loss. But they're sure and certainly not responsible if they lost all of your data. They're stating they're not responsible. Could that hold up in court? I don't know, but they are trying to indemnify themselves as much as possible. They're explicitly claiming that they're just a cloud-based computing service and that the data that resides on it is not theirs or in their responsibility matrix. So this is where it kind of starts to break down, right? Who does what? Microsoft claims that these are the things that they are responsible for. They're basically claiming to be a data center, which they are, and a cloud computing service, which they are. And they are explicitly stating that their data loss prevention capabilities are limited. You, as a user of Office 365, are 100% in control of your data. You have to set access control. You have to create user permissions. You are responsible for backing it up offsite and or in the cloud, right? You have to supply data security technologies to ensure that your usage of the platform meets your business need. So I'll let that sink in a little bit. And then I think I'm going to hand it over to my buddy, Michael, to take us a little bit through Microsoft Office 365 Veeam backup specific technologies, and I'll return in just a little bit.
Sweet. Thank you very much, William. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Deemer, Systems Engineer here for Veeam Software. And just like William said, I'm going to be taking you through the deep dive on the Veeam side and kind of the more technical deep dive here. So very start is, what is Microsoft Office 365 and what is it going to be able to do for you? The biggest thing that we're going to be able to do right off top is eliminate the risk of actually losing your data, right? Losing that control of your O365 data, just like we were talking about earlier, or William was talking about earlier, it's very mission critical. Now, this is going to expand all the way to Exchange, to SharePoint, OneDrive, and in Teams, but more importantly, there's so much more to just these particular components, at least for the data side, than just the upfront value, right? So the first thing that we're going to be able to do is protect your data. Now, we went into William went into a little bit about how there's ransomware as a service. There's different, basically, software as a service entities that even if you have no knowledge, they're going to be trying to come at you. Now, that's completely aligned with security threats, right? So, and then with those security threats, there's a lot of exploits that come directly to Office 365 in the form of emails, and just like William was saying a little earlier about phishing. Maybe they're not actually, like he was saying, actually delivering a payload, but they're gathering information. They're trying to see if you are a good target to get, you have good data, if they're going to actually make any money from that particular occurrence. Now, next thing here that we're going to be able to do is meet the legal and compliance requirements. So that's super huge. So if you need to keep your data for, let's just say 5 years or 10 years, or let's just pretend that you want to keep your data forever, with Veeam, you can do that. And you can store that data forever with phoenixNAP. But right now, as it sits, if you don't have Veeam to do that, guess what? You have 30 days, and that's really about it. There is a little bit, and I'll kind of show you a little later here on my slides, how there is a little bit longer, but it's not very much. And you're not going to be able to keep your data for those really like HIPAA compliances, any type of governance. You're not going to be able to keep them for that long just because O365 doesn't keep it for that long. Now, moving into actually what Veeam can, another Veeam component that it can do, we can restore individual files, making sure that if you have to go back to a point in time state, let's just say 3 months ago and you forgot a piece of mail, we can go back there very granularly and go and grab that piece of mail. Very, very quick, very, very easy. Last but definitely not least is going to be where we can store the backup. And I'm going to show you a little bit of architecture a little bit later in my slides of where all this can live and where everything is really happy. But again, it really doesn't matter from the Veeam perspective, whether you land that data back on-prem or if you move it over to phoenixNAP or Azure, AWS, really doesn't matter, just depends where you want this to store it. Now, moving on here, I want to go over what's the cyber attacks. So how often you're going to be able to, that we've seen historically, these are happening. Now, most part, 72%, which is a very high number of actually exploits or any type of malicious actors or anything that's actually going on for ransomware or crazy toolkits are going after Microsoft Office. Why is that? Well, they're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, providers for email, and especially on the business side. Next is going to be browsers at about 13-14%, Android, then JavaScript, Adobe Fresh, and then PDF. So the lower the likelihood of going down there, but I really want to drill home is these exploits that are actually attacking O365 are very, very high. And if you didn't have a backup to protect you against that, really the most that you're going to be able to get out of it is about 30 days with O365. And just like William was saying earlier, yes, they have, geo redundancy and stuff like that. However, it only captures 30 days of data compared to 30 years of data or 10 years of data of your actual concurrent, what you guys have in your production array. All right, moving on here, we're actually going to get into the backup side. So what can we do from targeting the O365 recovery? Let's see if this will. So O365 in recovery. So what is that going to be able to do? Well, from the very first, we're going to be able to protect your O365 data. Again, this is just going over a little more high level. Accidental deletion, exactly what I kind of covered right on the first slide. But again, those security threats and retention policy gaps are something that's very mission critical, making sure that we cover those. Quick resource for individual files, we kind of already talked a little bit about, and then meeting legal and requirements. Again, going into keeping your data for long periods of time is going to be very mission critical to make sure that you can provide that HIPAA stamp or that government of saying, hey, I have my data, I can give it to you if you need it at that last second. All right, so next I want to show out some of the architecture. So I'm going to work from the left side to the right side. So if you direct your eyes to that little icon in the middle, it says Veeam Backup and Replication from Microsoft Office 365. So that's going to be your controller. So that's going to be the guy that's actually handling all of the data. Now, it doesn't really matter where it lives. It can either live on premise, it can live in the cloud, it could live, with phoenixNAP, and they could be doing this. And what this is really showing you is that we can either back up the on-premise Exchange and SharePoint data, so that rest that actually is on-prem, or if you have full 365, we could go up there and grab that as well. So Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. Now, with that being said, one of the coolest things that we can do is directly back up. So this is one of the only products that Veeam has that we can directly land onto object storage. So if you wanted to, you could land on phoenixNAP storage, or if needed, you can land on other object storage, Amazon, Azure, Amazon S3 compatible storage. And then working our way to the right just a little bit is going to be all the explorers. So the explorers are actually how we get our data back. So when we get our data back, that's how we do it. So when we open an Explorer, we have a couple different options. So we can go in and restore it. For restoring, we can restore back to multiple different users if needed. We can send it back to the same user or multiple different users. Save, export, PST file. So if you're doing offboarding, this is really going to make that really, really easy. And then last but not least is the Veeam Self-Restore portal. So basically what this is having a HTML5 interface that overlies that particular server. So that way, if users need to go in and actually go and restore a particular file, they can go do that without actually opening a support ticket. So it's more of a way that more technically inclined people can go in there and restore stuff. And it's very, very easy to restore, and I'll kind of show you that here in a little bit. Moving next here, we're going to move into the actual retention policy for O365, and you're going to actually see that it's quite different from the Veeam perspective. So in here, what you're going to see is the retention period for inbox folder data, right? So we're going to be able to keep their inbox. So actually what's in your inbox is going to be able to live for a little longer than most. So you're at 2 years for what's in your inbox, but that does not take into consideration if you have any type of accidental deletion or you move a file and it's not in your inbox no more, it's not kept for that 2-year period. Now, anything in your deleted items, so basically your recycle bin, you have 30 days. 30 days, and that is it. After that, it gets permanently deleted, and it actually goes and geo-redundancy wipes all of those from the back or from what they have, what can be considered their backups. Now, auto archive, again, you're only keeping this data for 1 month. Same thing for SharePoint and SharePoint sites. 1 month. You have 1 month of data, or you have 30 days to go back and pull that data back, and after that, it's gone. Same thing with OneDrive, and then employee leaves the company. I'm actually going to tweak that a little bit. It is 30 days, but if that license key is ripped out from that user, that goes from 30 days to 0 days. Really, really quick. So it really depends on the offboarding status and how that works. But again, you're really not able to keep your data for long periods of time. This is really what that's showing. But if you have Veeam to be able to protect those data loads or those workloads, you're going to be able to see that we really don't care how long you want to keep the data. If you want to keep your data literally for 25 years or forever, you can, because that is your data. It's up to you. So again, this is way different comparatively to what O365 does for you natively. We're able to keep your data for as long as your heart desires, really dependent on how long you want to keep your data, and then if there's any compliance or governance compliance to really back that up. All right, so next we're going to actually move into some of the restoring processes. So what are the different options for restores? And I kind of touched on this just a little bit earlier, but for just Exchange alone, and it doesn't matter if we're on the online Exchange or if we're on premise, they're really going to have most of the time the same API. So now we can either back up an email, we can save it as a message file, save it as a PST file. What the biggest thing, and one of the coolest things that I like about Exchange and a PST is you can go to the online or the on-prem Exchange, and if you want to take a PST of the entire Exchange server as it sits today. You can do that. It's really, really quick. All you do is got to do that. Next is going to be moving into SharePoint. Again, it doesn't really matter if this is online or O365. We're still going to have all the same APIs. Now, going from top to bottom here, we're going to be able to send any SharePoint objects as an attachment. So if you need to move things around or you need to send a certain object to a certain user, you can do that. Now, moving into restores. You can do restores as well to prior versions. One of the biggest things, and I can't show it out here because I don't have my lab open, but there's a little item that says links. And what that will do is basically show you everything that that particular SharePoint site, OneDrive site has touched, due to the fact that anything in those properties like versioning, sensitivity count, who made it, when was the actual file made, all of that is very formatted in a very easy readable format. So if an admin needs to go in and say, hey, last week it looks like we were on version 3, but this is version 3.2. We need to revert back to that version. It's very easy to tell because it's very plain and very bold exactly what version it is, when was it made, when was it created, and when was it modified and what changes were done. So there's a lot of good stuff that comes along with that. All right, so this kind of leads me up to passing it back over to William, one of our Platinum VCSP partners, and he'll be able to take us through the rest of the webinar here.
All right, thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time. I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can get a couple of more things covered right before we finish it up. You know, with Office 365, you have to find a way to get in control of your data, and Veeam and phoenixNAP have worked together to put all of that control in your hands as a user. But not leave you responsible with the things that made you consume a cloud service in the first place, right? So you spend all this time getting Exchange off your prem and into Office 365, and you now, you know, potentially, if you want to try to address this yourself, you're stuck acquiring a software solution and infrastructure to get a cloud neutral copy of that back. And what we've been working together with Veeam to do is essentially take that, you know, off your hands, right? We've worked really hard to boil this down to a cost-effective per active user price point. No worrying about storage, size, and cost of storing the data. How many active users do you have, and a price per user that is, you know, I think as low as $2 a user or something like that, and maybe just slightly lower than that for really large users or large user counts, you know, and that basically delivers you a managed implementation of Veeam's Office 365 backup product. Covers SharePoint, covers Teams, covers Office 365 email, and OneDrive. And I think that, you know, the success that we've been delivering for our customers in this area is very complementary to their cloud adoption strategies, their cloud-based DR and backup strategies, which I think everyone, Gartner included, are recommending as being your kind of first and foremost. You know, there is benefits and value in leveraging an infrastructure provider that has solutions like this that can really protect your business in case of the worst outcomes. So we leave you in control. You can access things whenever you want. There's self-service ways to do that. You don't have to worry about standing up infrastructure, acquiring Veeam licensing. You don't have to do any of those things. And we can start taking backups of your Office 365 environment in literal minutes. So once we've worked out everything, we get accounts configured, start taking backups and copies of that data and storing it in a neutral location so that you can do whatever you want with it, right? You could literally go and decide you want to stand up Exchange again yourself, right? And get off Office 365 with the consistent copies that we have of that data. So I think that, in combination with other technologies and other solutions, this is kind of a final cap to a comprehensive data protection strategy. I know that a lot of you guys still do a lot of things in the data center on-prem. You still got VMs, you still got, big SANs, you still got all kinds of technologies. Those, not specific to this webinar, but I think and I hope that everyone understands the criticality of that data and why cloud-based DR and backup solutions are a kind of clear winner in that space. Just, nothing worse than buying two of everything, essentially, to hopefully never use it. And this, the myriad of solutions that we're able to deliver, a lot of them powered by Veeam, kind of give turnkey, turnkey solutions to those pressing issues. All right, I'm going to do one more poll here. I think, actually, it looks like two more quick ones, and then I'm going to take questions from the audience. Looks like we already got quite a few in here, so we're going to jump right into that. Looks like we're doing pretty good on time. Do you feel like you're adequately protecting yourself against ransomware, malware, and specifically in SaaS services and in the cloud? I mean, I think that that's a place that I know this is hard to be honest. It's a hard question to be honest with, but I think that if you think about it and you feel, adequately protected, then great, you're doing the right things. If you don't, I think that there's definitely some ways that we can help and work on that together. All right, I'm going to shut that down. Looks like there's a lot of people that, I assume because you're here, you feel like you might have it under control, but, not 100% sure. And then if anybody saw anything today that they really, want to learn more about, Office 365, ransomware, whatever that is, click the button and we will get in contact with you and talk about what kind of problems you're facing and see if there's anything we can do to help, and honestly be straightforward with you. If there isn't ways that we can help with that specific problem, I'll let you know, and then I'm going to jump directly into the questions for the day and go from there. Give this one more second. Everybody's voting fingers got numb during the presentation, but I thank you guys for staying engaged. Like I said, there's a lot of questions in here. I'm going to try to get through them as quickly and as expediently as I can. All right, I'm going to go close that down there. And thanks to everybody that voted, and we're going to move directly into Q&A. All right. Hopefully everybody had decent audio. We saw a couple people that said they had some audio issues, but we're going to go ahead and get everybody a copy of the presentation, and I could trust that we've seen the green bars floating on our side, so I feel like we have a good copy of the presentation. There'll be a recording, and then there's some handouts in there as well for everybody. All right, Mike, how does Veeam handle a mailbox that is set for litigation hold in Exchange Online?
That is a very good question. So basically the way that's going to work is even if it's in litigation hold or any type of actual long-term hold with Office 365 or your on-prem server, we're still going to take a backup of it regardless of actually what's going on. And we're going to keep that data for as long as you actually put it on your backup job, we'll keep it for. But yeah, we're going to not treat it any differently than anything else. We're still going to take a backup of it. And that's the most important part because we're targeting actually the data stores that reside on O365.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I think that even that data that is scheduled for data hold and litigation hold, it needs to be consistent and it needs to be backed up. Like you said, we're really kind of taking a copy of the entire data store that's being used, so that's going to come with it. Craig said, when doing restores from Azure Object Storage, does the Explorer program simplify the restore process through a wizard?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is all wizard driven. It doesn't matter if you're storing with Azure or phoenixNAP or any other object storage provider. It's all wizard driven. So through those explorers that I was kind of giving out a little earlier, that's how it's all driven. Doesn't matter where the actual ending data is, as long as, again, it's all explorer driven. So next finish type of a state. So yes, all wizard driven there.
And then Mike, we had another question, what are the different ways that people can, get Veeam backup for Office 365? Obviously, I know there's licensing and then there's services. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways to deploy. And I'll go over the infrastructure as a service way first, which would be with phoenixNAP. So you sign up with phoenixNAP, they connect to your tenant, and then they start backing that up and landing the data accordingly per your contract. Or option B, you actually stick it on a virtual machine or physical server. Really doesn't matter on that particular part. It does need to be a Windows Box 2008 R2 or better. The more updated version or flavor of Windows, the better off we're going to be. But those are really the only two big sticking points, is either you're actually having a managed service provider doing it or you're doing it in-house yourself.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's also worth mentioning that, even if you decide that you want to buy the licensing, phoenixNAP has a myriad of infrastructure as a service, pure IaaS solutions that you could use to install that software. We've got an S3 compatible object storage service that is very nearly 100% compatible with S3 APIs, and what works just the same way as it would if you're using AWS, but without the aggressive egress fees and a little bit lower storage price. So I think there's some good value there. We do see a lot of people looking at things like Wasabi, and I know that the cost can be enticing, but I think for everybody that does their due diligence, that looks at service availability, uptime, performance, and ultimately true cost of ownership, which can be a little bit different than what it says on the internet. I think that when you compare it to, acquiring the license, storing it yourself, et cetera, you find that, a price per user or active user can be a lot more enticing, right? And not having to worry about storage quotas and running out and getting more and, fluctuating bills and things like that. So I think the last one was, on the restoration side for Office 365, we're not charging any egress fees or anything like that. So if you wanted to grab an entire copy of your Office 365 data from the Veeam Explorer, you absolutely can do that. We're not going to stop you. It's not a common task. It's not something that probably you would want to do, but there's nothing that's standing in the way of doing that. So lots of things on that end. All right, and I think that's it. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their schedules. I know that during COVID, webinars are one of the only ways that you can kind of keep up to date with things. I hope to be back in front of audiences talking about these things soon at your favorite technology conference. But until then, I know everyone's tired, but thanks for coming out. Thanks for asking questions. It makes all of this very much engaging on our end. Thank you very much to Michael as well. And if anybody has any more questions, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer them as expediently as possible. Thank you guys and have a great day.